Hello, folks. I'm Chris Boult. So I'm here to tell you a little bit about my own meningitis story and journey. So um, to start with, I was in my early 30s. I was establishing my career in the probation service. I'd got a young family. I knew nothing about meningitis, um, and then suddenly one day I felt ill. I felt flu-like. I became delirious. It took me back to my military days. I was imagining I was back in Ireland and going through some sort of an incident, and then I imagined I was on the top of a mountain and waiting for Casevac for hypothermia. So I was going from being under fire to being dangerously cold in short succession, and sort of living these strange images. My wife was good enough to call a neighbour who came in, and between them they decided to call the doctor. The doctor recognised what he thought it would be, and they called an ambulance, and off I went down to A&E, and we live very close to the hospital. When I got there, I remember being pushed in the stretcher, still describing these stories, and having a series of people standing over me saying, "What's going on here then? Is this drink or drugs?" And I thought, well, I better shut up and behave myself now. So um, and then, of course, I had to have the lumbar puncture. So it was a guess, it was a young, I guess, inexperienced junior doctor who was on duty that day and probably never done it before. And my poor wife, who was pregnant, was sitting outside listening to me scream as the poor doctor was trying to find the right spot. Then they called out the path lab staff, and by 3 in the morning, yes, they diagnosed pneumococcal meningitis. I was put in a single room and pumped with large amounts of antibiotics, penicillin, as you'd expect. So I had a week in the hospital. I was just tired and washed out. And at the end of that week, I remember a doctor came in and said, "Well, you know what you've had, don't you?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, we're ready to discharge you." And I said, "That's thank you." And that was it. So I knew what it was called. Um, Ostensibly, they saved my life. Clearly, I could have died. The antibiotics had worked. So, as far as I was concerned, at the point that I walked out of the hospital, that was it. I'd had an illness. I'd had the treatment. It had stopped. I was fine, and I had no evidence to suggest anything other than that. So I walked home. I got home and thought, right, what was I doing before I went into hospital? Oh yes, I was decorating the kitchen. Well, I better get on with it. So I got a ladder out and started painting the ceiling, and got halfway down and thought, I really don't feel very well. And that basically was the start of the journey. So my initial experience really was confusion, lack of information, lack of knowledge, lack of any sort of preparation and expectation that there'd be any sort of follow-up implications from having had meningitis. Um, and that started me on a long journey of making those inquiries. I was off for 6 weeks. I went back to work in retrospect too early. I should have given myself more time. And I got two. I got one child, another one on the way, a mortgage, and I got on with it. So initially, I had a headache for permanent headache for 4 months, most of the time for seven. Um, Immediate effects were difficulty with light, difficulty with concentration, tiredness, dizziness, some disorientation. Um, and it was some time later when mood swings started to become a feature. I wouldn't call it depression. It was a sort of a 3 monthly cycle where it really was the classic. Somebody's drawing a curtain, and you feel that you're going into a dark place for a few months, after that time the curtain opens and off you go again. And I didn't think too much about it for years. After a year, I did a canoe marathon, which was a sort of a psychological success to feel that I'd overcome it. I competed in a local marathon, and I came in, as far as I can remember, seventh out of several hundred participants. So I felt pretty fit. So I reckon I peaked somewhere between 12 and 18 months in terms of plateauing the initial after effects. Thereafter, a long time sort of passed with confusion about this. I had various attempts at trying to find out a bit more information. Eventually got in touch with meningitis research, started to get more of a picture of common features of meningitis, had some medical support from the GP, had some counselling, but pretty much got on with it. And then by 2008, I'd had several promotions. I was the MAPA coordinator for Staffordshire, which is a fascinating but responsible position, and it was highly stressful. And suddenly, from nowhere, 2008, I felt seriously ill. My blood pressure was out of control. I got heart palpitations. I was quite worried. So I had some time off sick, and at 50 thought, I've got to take stock of this. I was coming to the end of my time in that job, and I thought, well, what do I want to do next? I didn't want further promotion, and I didn't really want a sideways move still in senior management. So I thought, well, they're not going to let me go at 50. So I gave some thought to my options, and I decided I'd revert to main grade. Got a job in a prison as a report writer, probation officer, and hoped that I could do that for 5 years and then retire. It didn't work out like that, because I changed the job after 5 months, not 5 years, and then I went part-time, and then I transferred from a high-risk prison to a women's prison. But I had a series from 2008 to 2015. It was pretty much an annual round of serious depressive episode with complications with vertigo and problems with concentration. So I then, I retired in 2015, and again I thought, well, that'll be it then. Take all the stress and the pressure off, I'll be fine. But of course, it's not that simple. So basically, it's been a long journey of exploration, where I've had depressive episodes, and I'm still on depressive medication, problems with hearing, vertigo, balance, problems with sensitivity to light, mood swings, irritability, irritable bowel, tinnitus, confusion, poor concentration, poor temperature control, headaches, some memory loss. So, not an unusual combination. Meningitis research has been great over the years in providing information and support. I had a lot of support from them. When I retired, I became a befriender and ambassador, and I've spent quite a bit of time talking to other people with similar problems and trying to reassure them and help them get through. So basically, what have I found that works? Well, I think you've got to be realistic about this, and try and put it into some sort of context. At the time that I had contracted the meningitis, pneumococcal was killing about 2 out of 5, so I survived. So I was lucky, and I was grateful for that. I was grateful for the quick hospital response and treatment. Being realistic, when you've got these sorts of symptoms and these sorts of after effects, the damage is done. You're not going to get rid of it. You have to learn to manage it, and you have to learn to live with it as best you can. So patience, resilience, fortitude, and pragmatism are all useful tools in the armoury. I did find counselling useful in putting things into context. I have found the antidepressive medication helpful, and basically the trick seems to be avoid getting too tired and avoid stressful situations. And having had more than my fair share of stress in my lifetime, perhaps, I'm susceptible to it. So I'm very conscious of keeping the battery charged, not overrunning the battery, and basically sort of monitor my own performance and watch for early symptoms. So early symptoms are irritability, increased tiredness, and then what usually happens then is a dip in mood. And using a traffic light analogy, when I'm in the green, I can feel it when it slides to amber. And usually what happens is that you're on a conveyor belt, and you continue to decline through amber and fall off the end into red. And then it can be 3 to 6 months of being really quite ill before it starts to ease and you come out of it again. And when that's pretty much an annual event, it's quite a impact on your lifestyle. But I've got better at dealing with it. My family's been very good and supportive, and they've got better at understanding it, and helping other people deal with their situations helps me understand it better and helps me deal with it better. And you know, every time it reoccurs, the temptation is to think, oh no, why now? Why me? Why again? Well, I've stopped asking those questions because there aren't really any answers. It just happens. It just is. I've accepted that now, and I'm better at dealing with it when it comes. I close down, I rest, I close the diary. I'll be pretty antisocial. I don't want to see people, don't want to do a great deal. I sleep a lot, and you've just got to go through that, and keep telling yourself that you will come out of it, and trying to challenge your rational thoughts, trying to put things into context. I sort of see myself as a sort of my depressive perception of the world is not an accurate perception, and I keep reminding myself of that. So what I'm seeing is what the illness is dictating, and you try and step out of that and see the reality. Now it's easy to say because at the time you can't see it, but there's some comfort in saying it is actually there, and constantly try and remind myself of the good things that keep me buoyant, things that I enjoy, things that give me joy, and be patient and wait, and then think, oh well, that's that then for a bit. What was that all about? And you start again. And I have had one summer where it didn't reoccur, and I haven't quite boxed what that was about. I think I'd perhaps been a little bit more diligent in not getting overtired and overdoing it. So here we are again in the spring. I've had a good winter. Felt a little bit of deterioration into amber, and this time it worked. By stepping back, recharging the battery, taking stock, I feel I've gone back into green rather than forward into red. So hopefully this summer I'll have a break from it, but I won't guarantee it, and if it happens, it happens. I hope it won't, but if it does, it does. So that's basically my story, and I'm more than happy to take any questions.